On this episode, Trevor and Josh bring on Chris, aka Frid Nips, aka Friddler on the Roof, to talk about his upbringing in music and just to pick his brain on some of the bands we've talked about. So thanks for jumping on, and let's open this pit up.
Somebody hit somebody!
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Pit Therapy Podcast. You have me, Trevor, and Josh, and then Kyle is out of town, so we have a special guest this week, Chris, also known as Chrissy. Chris, what other nicknames did you have?
Way too many. We
Way
had
too
Fur, we had Frid Nips,
This Chris,
all sorts of nicknames.
maybe we'll have to title this episode Nips.
There you go.
Sounds like a good title. So, well, hey, thanks so much for jumping on with us. Just to kind of get things started, what have you guys been listening to this week?
I've been listening to the new singles from Suration. I don't think the record drops till next month, but you can actually pre-order the LP, and they're delivering them right now, and so you can kind of get a sneak peek of the entire new record. But everything they dropped so far right now is awesome. I love that band. I think they're really, really good.
Chris, do you listen to anything new, or what's kind of your go-to right now?
Right now I'm on the Dance Gavin Dance binge, getting ready for the show this weekend, so been trying to catch up on their newest stuff.
Who are they here with again? Do you know the other bands playing?
I looked them up the other day. I'd have to look them up again. I know one of them. It's a band I've heard of before, but never really listened to. It's like Sim, I think, SIM. They're a Japanese like hardcore band.
You sure it's not Stimp?
No, it's three. It's three letters. I know that, and then they're also It's like it's something Rain. It's actually the new name of Slave, Johnny
Slaves.
Craig's old band. So
Oh.
they rebranded, got rid of the name, and then obviously not Johnny Craig as the singer anymore.
Yeah, Rain City Drive, right?
There we go. Yep, that's it.
Yeah, so, well, dope. So that is the Jackpot Juicer Tour. I, for some reason, was dumb this week and forgot that it's Labor Day on Monday and I'm going to be out of town. And so I thought I was going to this concert with you. So I've been on a Dance Gavin Dance binge as well, catching up on their latest albums. And then
How
on
funny
top
is
of
that? How funny is that? Two projects from Johnny Craig are touring together without Johnny Craig.
Yep, I actually got kind of excited when I saw the other band playing because I was thinking Johnny Craig would be there with it, but obviously he's got his issues and gets kicked out of every band he's part of. So
Quit selling laptops. Big ones.
So you know what's funny? I saw this last week. I'm pretty sure it was Kellen Quinn's Twitter got hacked, and the hacker was trying to sell an Air Mac or AirBook, whatever they're called, MacBook Pro. What's up with the scene and trying to sell MacBooks?
I don't know. I have you seen that video of people taking AirPods, like brand new ones, and going to these old people and say, pick a number between 1 and 10, and they're like 7, like, oh my gosh, you want these brand new AirPods, and they'll put them in their pockets and they try to walk out the door and they set the alarms off.
No, that's terrible.
they like make them steal the AirPods.
Yeah, dude, it's so funny. I was laughing so hard.
That's just such a rude thing to do. It's so crazy because these days all you see is like people going up to random people in the store and be like, give me $5 for this lunchbox. Oh, there's $5,000 in there. See, you should have done it.
Yeah,
Like,
the mystery boxes.
yeah, it's such a stupid thing. And then you get kids who are preying now on the elderly who have seen these videos on Facebook, who they're like, hey, you want these? They're like, yeah, sure, I'll take those. And then they go to jail. So
My wife's been playing some game. I don't even know what it's called, but she wins all this stupid stuff. And the other day I got this package on the doorstep. I thought she ordered more Amazon stuff. I about lost my mind, but she had like 3 sets of off-brand AirPods. And I was like, why? Why are you buying this stuff? She goes, oh, I play this game and I just win free stuff. So I was like, well, I'm taking one.
are they good? Have you tried them yet?
Yeah. I mean, the battery doesn't last very long, but I mean, they were free. So whatever.
I
You
got
go to like the gym and stuff, you know?
Well, not music related, but this just popped up right before we jumped on. Warner Brothers is having its 100th anniversary, and to celebrate, Goonies is returning to the theater. We all getting together and go and see the Goonies?
I would be down to see Goonies in the theater.
When are they doing that?
Looks like in like a week, September 10th is the 100-year anniversary. So
Oh, that's
next
cool.
weekend, I think, or 2
That's cool.
weekends.
Speaking of Warner Brothers, it's more Harry Potter related, but my wife's got to go to a conference out in Orlando at the end of November. She asked me if I wanted to go, and I'm like, "Well, yeah." And she's like, "I don't know what you're gonna do." I'm like, "I'm 15 minutes from Universal. I know exactly what I'm gonna do." But I guess they're gonna like pay for like a private event that night and pay for the park for one night, and we're just gonna go hang out. It's all paid for. So
That's
That's
pretty
legit.
cool.
and then I go back again 3 weeks after that.
Oh my gosh. What are you doing with your kids?
Probably just stay with my parents. So Lily goes to
Nice.
school up in Farmington. So to be honest, at one of those trips, I'm just like, I don't even care. I'll just have the dogs watch the kids. They'll figure it out.
I gotcha. Well, no, that's sick. So, just kind of jumping into it. This week, we're just going to kind of reminisce, right? We're just going to talk about Chris. I got a lot of questions for you and some stuff like that. And then we've gone over about 10 bands to this point. So, I want to get your thoughts on some of them. Just kind of first off, we've known each other for, gosh, how long now at this point? 25 years, probably.
Yeah, at least.
Is that where we're at? And dude, I'm pretty sure you've been part of my whole musical upbringing. You were the guy who burnt all the CDs for me. How many computers did you have to crash to get all of that music for us?
LimeWire, man. Back in the day of piracy. A lot of viruses for that music.
It's like,
A
how many
lot of
computers did you destroy?
Exactly. But I was going to ask you, so how did you get into this music? Because you have a couple older brothers and stuff like that. So, like, what got you going down this scene?
It's honestly a great question because I've tried to think about this before. I feel like the earliest memories I have is Thrice is definitely one of the earliest. Probably Artist in the Ambulance was one of the earliest that I can remember like listening to back to back. There used to be a game on the original Xbox called Desert Storm. I don't know if you guys ever played it. It was like the early days of Call of Duty.
I remember the name.
Yeah, and me and my brother would play Desert Storm every day, and we had burned Thrice onto the Xbox, and you could listen to your music over the game.
I
And we
forgot you
just,
could do that.
yeah, we used to just listen to Thrice as we played good old Desert Storm. Another one that I can remember is Story of the Year, but I honestly don't remember how. I don't know where I listened to that the first time, but I remember that was the first time like I vividly remember screaming in music and thinking like, "Oh, that's different. That's unique." And like it was good. And I immediately liked it, which I think is probably surprising for a lot of people because they don't immediately like that type of music.
Mm-hmm.
And then Linkin Park, right? I mean, Linkin Park is always an old band that had some screaming in their music. So I would say those were probably the three bands I remembered the most in my early years of music that got me more into kind of the hardcore scene. And then it just escalated from there.
You know, Story of the Year is probably a good one to get into it with. So they're coming actually for the 20-year anniversary of Page Avenue, which that was their really popular one. That had Until the Day I Died, that had Anthem of Our Dying Day. But Story of the Year did it right with screaming. It was very much like a lot of singing, and then they would just hit you just on occasion. It wasn't overboard. So it was probably a really good introduction to screaming in music.
I think them and The Used were a very good introduction to screaming music that made it on the radio like X96. Because I remember hearing both The Used and Story of the Year on X96. That may have been where I first heard both of those bands, to be honest with you.
Especially
couldn't
in
say for sure.
Utah. The
Yeah.
Used was huge in Utah, so they were talked about a lot.
So
Mhm.
we talked about From First to last week, and Kyle asked us, "What's the bigger scene band, From First to Last or The Used?" And Josh and I both put From First to Last up there, but The Used was the bigger band here in Utah. What are your thoughts on like From First to Last? Was that a band that you were interested in, or not really?
No, I love From First to Last. The Dear Diary album was definitely another early album I remember listening to. I feel like that was one I started listening to them around like the same time as Senses Fell and those types of bands. But like Emily, I love that song. It's definitely not one of their more scream songs. It's a soft song, but that's one of my favorite songs of all time.
It's funny. I talked to this guy I work with today. So yesterday, I don't know if you remember this band, Job for a Cowboy. Do you remember
Oh
them?
yeah.
So they released a single yesterday after
Mhm.
like 9 years, and it's actually like really good. But we got in this conversation. I was telling him, I was like, Job for a Cowboy released this new single, and he was like, "Is it any good?" You know, and we kind of got started going down, reminiscing down the same road of like metal. And he was like, Job for a Cowboy was really good, and then just like as soon as they hit Hot Topic, they just sucked. So, like, what do you guys think? Do you think any band that like made its way into Hot Topic, like as soon as like if you found a band and then you went to the mall because it's just what you did as like a 15, 16-year-old kid, and you walked past Hot Topic and then you saw the band that you were really into in Hot Topic, did you immediately think like, well, this band's going downhill?
Hawthorne Heights, I would say, for me.
Hawthorne was the one for you. I mean,
Yeah,
the
probably.
Cut My Wrist and Black Your Eyes didn't do it for you. They were
Dude,
going downhill at that point.
dude, back then those emo songs were my jam. I love those songs, but
Listen, I'm
yeah.
right there with you. I'm pretty sure we were standing in your living room one day, and one of our other friends started drawing a picture of me crying and wrote emo Trevor underneath of it. And it made me so mad. Do you remember that?
I know, but it sounds about right.
Well, yeah. So I was all into that too. But Josh, back to your question. I think the one band that I felt like did that, but that I still loved was AFI. When Miss Murder came out, I'm pretty sure they were plastered everywhere on Hot Topic.
You know what's funny is like when Miss Murder came out, I was not into that record at all.
I love December
That's
Underground.
probably the only album I know the release date of.
But
Oh,
like
really?
666.
same
Oh,
thing
yeah.
with Bury Your Dead. As soon as Bury Your Dead hit Hot Topic, I was like, oh, here we go. And the record was not that great. And it's
Okay.
with From First to Last, you went the Dear Diary to Heroin.
Yeah, and Heroin was trash.
The way
Chris, do you remember Heroin?
I vaguely, it's definitely not one that I could like pick out right now. Like I can't think of any songs off of it.
Okay, because that was us too last week.
well,
Have you
it's
listened to any of their newer stuff like Dead Trees? I actually liked Dead Trees quite a bit.
yeah, I really like Dead Trees.
I
The
I
song
did
Dead
too.
Trees is really good.
Yeah, I like that. I personally like the singles where Sonny's back on the one at least. I thought those were good too.
What's interesting, like I know in a few episodes we've kind of mentioned gatekeeping. So like when I was talking to my coworker about Job for a Cowboy, I was kind of mentioned like about our podcast, and I was like, what makes you think that like Job for a Cowboy like went downhill as soon as they hit Top Topic? And he bluntly said, because you had a bunch of 12-year-old weenies wearing Job for a Cowboy shirts they had no business wearing. You knew they were not into that. They just wore it because that was the hot item on Hot Topic. And I'm like, that's probably fair.
That's
You know,
true. That's true. I mean, at that time, so Job for a Cowboy was one of those. Whitechapel was probably the other big deathcore band. Suicide Silence, right? Those were
Winds of
probably the
Play,
three.
Despised Icon. Yeah.
And for some reason, Job for a Cowboy took the brunt of it. Like I felt like Suicide was still up on a pedestal, and I felt like Whitechapel got put on a pedestal, but Job for a Cowboy just took all the hate.
You think maybe it's because of the way they look? Because if you've ever watched old Job for a Cowboy videos, they all just look like emo kids. And the only one in Suicide Silence that did was Mitch. I don't know. Interesting.
Maybe. Chris, did you ever get into deathcore the way that some of us did?
Not really, no.
What
Like
was
all of
like
those bands you guys just listed, I couldn't tell you if I've ever actually sat down and listened to them.
so what was like the heaviest music that you got into?
Probably like, oh, why can't I think of their name now? I mean, Devil Wears Prada, to me at the time was very heavy. Who else did I listen to?
I think they were a good transition to heavier from a band like Census Fail going into Devil Wears Prada, because that kind of led you into bands like August Burns Red as well.
Yep, that's exactly who I was trying to think of. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, August Burns Red was a good band that I listened to a lot. But I would say that's probably where it ended, though. I didn't really go much heavier than bands like that.
So we talked about Parkway a couple weeks ago.
Good old Parkway.
What are your thoughts today on Parkway?
I honestly haven't listened to them probably since high school, but I do remember in high school thinking they were sick. Like that breakdown, There's Blood in the Water, was probably the coolest thing that had ever released at that point. I love that breakdown.
Yeah, we talked about that quite a bit. So that was on Horizons, that was Boneyards. And then the album before was Killing with a Smile. That was the one that we were forever playing in our cars, going crazy with. I remember you listening to a lot of All That Remains. Am I crazy with that?
Off the top of my head, I don't really remember that, but it's possible. I'm trying to think of,
Like,
you know,
I
like
felt
what
like
album that would be.
it was the one with the guy facing backwards, grabbing the wall. I can remember the album cover. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head.
The Fall of Ideals.
That's the one. I feel like I listened to that album a lot with you. I feel like I listened to the Human Abstract quite a bit with you.
Yeah, I remember going to a show. I don't remember who was headlining, but the Human Abstract was there, and I specifically remember Josh not really knowing who they were, but we gave him a heads up of their very first song that they were playing. That's, I swear, it's like an 8-minute long song, but it has one of the best breakdowns ever. And we were like, Josh, you got to get ready, man. I promise there's a good breakdown. I know you don't really know this band, but just wait for it.
Okay, I gotcha.
I remember seeing them. I could be crazy. I thought it was at the country club in Ogden.
I don't remember.
Yeah, that would have been early. That would have been like either 2007 or 2008. Probably 2008.
Yeah, it could have been.
You know what's funny is I remember the Human Abstract playing and seeing them. I don't remember who they played with.
I don't either. I know they weren't headlining that tour, though.
We saw them a few times. The one that like I vividly remember is we went and we watched them at Warped Tour in 2007, probably. That one, like I remember standing. It was probably 2000. Yeah, it was probably 2007 because I remember standing there and watching them and just kind of being in awe at their bass player and everything that he was doing. Like that bass player was just solid.
Yeah, that's definitely a band that the bass sticks out a lot more than others for sure.
Yeah, no, 100%. 2008, it probably wasn't 2008, but they were on tour with Every Time I Die, From First to Last, The Bled, August Burns Red, The Human Abstract. I don't think it was that show. We talked about the show that you're alluding to.
It might have. Was it As I Lay Dying?
Was it? Were we out at? They weren't on the show that was out at Saltaire, were they?
No, it wasn't Saltaire. It was a smaller venue.
Okay. They were on a tour with the Human Abstract, Gwen Stacy, and Sky Eats Airplane, and I remember seeing Gwen Stacy a couple of times. Maybe that was where we saw them.
I don't remember.
But yeah, no, I'd have to dig back in and look it up a little bit more. What do you remember about going to concerts, Chris, with Josh? Now that you've already alluded to going to shows with Josh.
I know Josh has a fantastic story about going to concerts with me. It's his favorite story to tell people.
You did it, not me.
Have
Have you ever heard this
out
story,
there?
Trevor?
Okay, you guys say that you tell this every time we're together, and I know all of our stories, so I'm sure I have, but you gotta tell it at this point.
I don't remember exactly where we were at the elementary, right there on like the Farmington Centerville border. Is it Reading?
Yeah.
Reading, yeah.
We were Reading Elementary, just doing whatever, like just messing around, and I can't remember like what. I think was it Megan Dole that had a camera that was taking pictures of all of us.
Very possible, because I'm pretty sure the only time I've ever hung out with her in my life is with you.
Okay. So I say that because this is the only reason like this even happened. So like we were taking pictures of like just like friends or whatever, and we were all standing like in a line. And I think I leaned over to it was either to Kyle or our buddy Steven, and I was like, watch this. And I pulled my pants down just so my butt was out, and I stood next to Chris, and I reached over and I like barely touched his butt because it's just like what we did to mess with each other or whatever. And he reached over and grabbed my bare butt. And he was so mad.
So I don't remember it being at the elementary. I thought it was at a concert, but it wasn't at a concert. It was at the elementary.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, if we were all together, we were probably just waiting to go to a show, would be my assumption.
True.
But yeah, I remember you were really upset, and I was laughing so hard I was crying. Somebody else was crying with me, and I can't remember who it was. But
Some
yeah,
pregame butt grabbing. It's
Yeah.
like Night at the Roxbury. Did you
I
touch
don't
my
know.
butt?
I don't know what it is about teenagers and butts, man, but for some reason we were always grabbing butt, and Josh is the only one, but he made me grab his bare butt.
Well, it's a bonding moment that hell, you guys will never forget. So I just pulled it up. So we saw All That Remains, Misery Signals, and The Human Abstract together. And I
Okay.
know that we went to that show. And this is why I was saying I'm pretty sure I was with you for All That Remains quite often, because I know that I went to All That Remains with you a couple of times.
I'm honestly, I don't know why, but for the life of me cannot think of All That Remains. I'm gonna
Really?
after we're done here, I'm gonna have to go. I'm sure as soon as it kicks on, I'll be like, oh duh. But I think it's just one of those bands I haven't listened to in so long that I can't even picture what they sound like.
Probably. Yeah, no, I still like All That Remains, but they were I mean, they're pretty much straight metal to metal core. So it was different than what we were typically listening to, but still in that kind of same vein. Where do you feel like you are today with music? Like, what do you still just, is it something you keep up on, or is it something that you go back to?
It's definitely not something I keep up on. I'm very much stuck in the past. So most of what, if I listen to any type of screamo or heavy music, it's what we listened to in high school. I don't really pick up on new bands or new things. Even the bands we listened to in high school, I normally don't listen to their new stuff. But I've definitely, I guess, mellowed out would be the term of my music. Like I've broadened my spectrum of what I listen to a ton. So most of what I listen to these days is pop punk stuff, but I'll even listen to stuff that has nothing to do with what we used to listen to, like the 1975. I don't know if you guys have ever listened to that, but like that's the kind of music that like you'll hate them, Josh, I promise you. But that's the kind of music like I've branched out to. So my taste of music, I don't want to necessarily say has changed, but it's altered. That I don't listen to a lot of what I used to listen to anymore. Not because I don't like it anymore. It's just I think I branched out.
So do you feel like you aren't keeping up because of a time thing, or why do you feel like you don't necessarily like keep up on new music? Because I'm
It's
curious about this, because I did it too.
a good question because that maybe it's a time thing. I don't know, but that was one of my favorite things to do back in junior high and high school. Me and Kyle would spend hours on MySpace looking up, going to our favorite bands and looking at their top 8 and then clicking on one of those and then looking at their top 8, and we would just deep dive and try and find as many new bands as we could that we liked. And I love doing that. And now I don't know why, but like as of right now I have zero desire to do that for some reason.
It's funny you kind of say that though. You kind of just revert back to like what you grew up listening to, because I do a lot of the same thing. I listen to a new band and I think it's really good, like the band Suration, like I talked about. I think they're really good. They're probably one of my favorite bands that's out right now. But I'll listen to it and then I just go back to 2007, 2008, and then I just continue on. I'm like, that was cool. Yeah, and I couldn't really tell you why either. I don't know if it's like a nostalgia thing, if that's just what my brain's wired to like hear. But I also think that's a result of me not really going to many shows now. I'll go to like the 20-year reunions. Like we went to the Thrice one, right? And I went and saw AFI, and I'm going to go to Story of the Year and things like that. But like, because there's so many shows coming up, and while they're really good and I want people to go, to shows, there is a part of me that's like, I won't pay $20 for that show, but I'll save for 40 to go see the band that I really loved to see when I was like 16.
So do you guys feel like it's like, and maybe this is old being old, right? But it takes effort to listen to new music. Like, I don't know about you guys, but if I like listen to a new album, I'm like almost tired at the end of it. Like trying to catch my breath whenever like something awesome hits or something like that. It's almost like overwhelming. And maybe that's part of what going back is you're like, all right, here's the breakdown. I already know what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of one of those things. Do you guys get like physically tired from like listening to stuff, or is that just me?
I mean, the more that we've been talking about this, I've started to think about TV shows. Do you guys watch a lot of new TV shows, or do you find yourself going back to the same ones and rewatching?
Going back often.
It, it
So,
it takes a lot for me to get into like a new series, but yeah, a lot of times I just go back and rewatch like Sons of Anarchy or The Office or Parks and Rec.
right. And so the more I think about it, I think it's we don't want to put effort into something new. When I watch TV or when I listen to music, it's because I want to relax. I don't want to focus. I don't want to use the brain power. So when I'm listening to the music, I go to the old stuff because I already know it. I can sing along. It's just playing in the background. I can do something else while I'm listening to it. Whereas if I listen to new music, I don't know the lyrics. I have to pay attention to decide if I actually like it. And so I'm wondering if that's why I don't as much, is because I don't want to put the effort in to learn the new music.
I mean,
Okay.
like with comics, like you have the entire Marvel universe and everything that they release. Whenever I try to go watch like a side story that's like not Marvel related at all, but it's like superhero stuff, it's like a cool concept, but I'm just not into it because it's Marvel does it so much better. So I revert back to watching more Marvel stuff. However, like you take a series like The Boys, and that to me like completely like blew my mind, and that's what caught me onto it, so I can watch that. So it's almost like in new music, like I really like I say, the band Suration. I really like Chamber because they're so different from what I listened to when I was younger, and I can't really relate them to much bands now, except maybe like like Dillinger Escape Plan or something. But I will say though, I wish bands like these two in particular, or like Inclination, were bands when I was like 17, because like kind of what you were saying about being tired. I love listening to these bands and stuff like that, but like I'm gonna be 34 this year. I'm like, I do not have the energy to like go wild for those bands, but I really wish they were bands when I was 17 because I would try to rip people in half.
For real,
You
though.
know, that's the only thing that bums me out. I'm like, I wish you guys were a band when I was younger because I would have gone wild.
Gosh dang, man. Like, could you imagine some of these bands that are coming out today? We've talked a lot about like you just said, Inclination, Tsunami. Like these bands in the shows are just insane right now. Could you imagine being 10 years younger?
But do you think like it could be opposite too? Like, I mean, I'm sure there's young kids out there that are like, I never got to see bands like Job for a Cowboy. I never got to see As Blood Runs Black. I never got to see Darkest Hour. Or like I never got to see Suicide Silence with Mitch in a tiny venue or the original like lineup of Stick to Your Guns with their first record.
Man, you're
Because
just like
those are things that we
stabbing.
got to see, you
That's
know?
true. That's true. But
So maybe it's kind of a back and forth thing where they're like, I would have killed to see that band. And I'm like, but you saw them so many times. You're like, yeah, I really wish I was 10 years younger so I could like keep up with everybody for this band. 'Cause that's what I want to do.
yeah. I mean, I loved our scene. I loved the shows that we went to, the groups of the crowds that were there and stuff like that. But there were oftentimes there was like 30 of us in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I've seen many shows these days where there's like 30 people in the room. There's usually more. Would it have been more fun to see those bands with a little bit larger crowds? Not saying I didn't enjoy what we did, but would it have been more fun if there had been 50 to 100 people in the room? Or did we get something special having it be 30?
I think it really comes down to the kind of crowd you're dealing with. Because if you have 50 people and 40 of them are just standing there doing nothing, the show kind of sucks. So almost like when you maybe it was fine just with the 30 of us because we would just go wild. So it didn't matter that there was only 30 people. Everyone was having a good time, whether it was a house show, a park show, or just a small local show.
That's
Because like
true.
because I mean, you know, sometimes you get a band that comes through here, no one knows them, and there's 100 people there, and they literally just create a giant horseshoe, and everyone just stands there, and you're like, well, this is a good turnout, but this crowd sucks.
And there's one person in there swinging.
Yeah.
What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, no, I definitely prefer a packed house. I think it's cool to reminisce about the small shows just to kind of it's almost kind of like a bragging thing, right? Like, yeah, man, I saw these guys like when nobody was listening to them. One
Mm-hmm.
that comes to mind to me is a Skylit Drive. I remember me and Kyle went to a show in Ogden,
Mm-hmm.
and there was maybe 20 to 30 people there, and this was like original singer of Skylit Drive, their very first album. He never did anything else with them, and it's cool to think back on because we walked across the street to McDonald's afterwards, and they were there. So me and Kyle like hung out with them, and while they ate their food and stuff. But looking back to the actual show and the atmosphere, it sucked because
Mm-hmm.
nobody was doing anything. Like there was so much open space. Basically, everybody could go straight to the stage because you didn't have to stand behind anybody. And so it's kind of a weird atmosphere when there's not many people there.
I feel like that show with Attack Attack was the same way. Attack Attack Confide,
Yeah.
the Alien, the Sons of Disaster. I remember when Attack Attack played, there was hardly anybody there, and then within like 6 months, they blew up. You know,
Yeah.
it's like fun for like I say, yeah, like you say, like to reminisce, but at the same time, you're like, it's kind of a crappy turnout.
See, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I almost feel like if there was the crowds today at the bands that we enjoyed back when we were younger, I don't know. Maybe we wouldn't have gone to as many concerts as we went to because maybe we have gotten beat up a lot more or hurt a lot more and things like that. But I think that it would have been. I like bouncing off of crowds. I like getting pushed around. Like that's why I go to shows oftentimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. It probably would have been more fun. I don't know.
I wish there was more variety of pop punk bands coming up. I mean, you had Newfound Glory, Saves the Day, was Polar Bear Club. You
Set
had
your goals. 4 year strong.
Set Your. I guess I don't really classify set or For Your Strong Set Your Goals in the same as like Newfound Glory because they're a little more
Okay.
gory.
Okay.
But and Say Anything, you know.
Okay.
But when you compare it to bands, they're at now, bands like Knuckle Puck or like The Wonder Years, The Story So Far, where they like took pop punk and like made it like a little cooler, where it could kind of go both ways, kind of like what Set Your Goals and For Your Strong was doing. I wish there was more variety of that because I think my opinion would definitely change on the best pop punk band ever because it's still a tie between Newfound Glory and Saves the Day.
It's
Why
funny
do
that
you
you bring
want
up
more
Saves
variety
the
there,
Day.
though? Oh,
What?
yeah, Chris.
Trevor knows my Saves the Day story. We were actually talking about him. It was a bit like a month ago, if that. I was coming home from the Real Salt Lake game. It was like 10:30 at night, and I called Trevor up, and I'm like, dude, there's this band. I don't know why I thought of them, but I cannot remember their name. And so me and Trevor spent like the next. Did we even find out that night, or was it the next day? I don't even remember.
No.
Like
10:30 at night, right? And Chris doesn't call me. Let's be honest. I am the friend in this relationship, Chris. We're just gonna put that out there. But I'm just kidding. So Chris calls me at 10:30, and my wife is sitting there next to me. We're watching a show or whatever, and it rings in, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I actually silenced it. I ignored his first call, and
he
Ash is
screamed
like,
me.
and my wife is like, who was it? I was like, oh, it's Chris. He's like, he's probably engaged. Call him back. So I call him back. I'm like, what's up, man? He's like, dude, there's a band I can't remember the name of, and my wife could hear it, and she just rolled her eyes. She's like, oh my gosh.
What
So
was the one clue I gave you? Do you remember?
it starts with
only
an
thing-
S. And it has 2 words in its name, which is 3 words. So
It
totally
was
threw
3
me
words.
off.
There was one more clue though. Do you remember?
Yeah, he had pink hair.
Yep, he had Pink Carrot Warp Tour. That was the only thing I could remember, and that's what he had to go off of to try and figure out the band.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's funny. But I mean, okay, Josh, pop punk. At this time, this was like the We the Kings, all of that stuff. We didn't listen to that. So why did you want more? There was tons of radio pop punk at the time.
It wasn't. That's the problem. It was radio pop punk. So it was just kind of like We the Kings was like kind of poppy, and it just kind of turned into just rock.
And then like Forever the Sickest Kids and
I didn't like Forever
the
Sickest
Man.
Kids. I thought they were terrible.
So
What about Paramore? Did you like Paramore back then?
Yeah, I like Paramore, but it's kind of the same deal. They just kind of just got away from pop punk. Like after Riot, like their other stuff is good, but it just turned more into rock. Like it more just turned into radio rock.
So
to
let's
me.
make sure we're clear here. There was plenty of pop punk. You just didn't classify it as pop punk.
It's not though. Like you couldn't compare We the Kings to Knuckle Puck.
We're not talking about Knuckle Puck.
That's what I'm saying. I wish there was pop punk like Knuckle Puck. They're like The Wonder Years or The Story So Far.
Okay.
Where like We the Kings, I would never think We the Kings was pop punk. I would just think they were just rock. Like the Main. Like the Main's not pop punk. The Main's just rock. I mean, it's good. But I'm thinking pop punk, like I want some like kind of punk beats with some like melody to it and just like makes you want to like jump up and down. We the Kings, I don't want to jump up and down. I want to pull out a lighter and like sing my sorrows, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, to me, Newfound Glory is just nostalgic, but Saves the Day is just really, really good. I think maybe I just single those two out because like they're hardcore kids. They have, ties to like, the straight edge movement, and they're just, basically kind of put the persona out there that like, hey, you can be a hardcore kid, but you can also be positive human being and do good too. So I think that's why I like those bands mostly.
So what you're saying is Machine Gun Kelly's not cutting it for you.
No.
I'll be honest. I actually kind of like Machine Gun Kelly's album. Like, did you guys give it a listen? Did you listen through it?
It's got some decent moments. I'll give him that.
I like the song he has with Halsey.
Yeah. He's got his moments, okay? Like,
However,
there's some decent stuff.
it is mainly written and produced by Travis Barker, so it makes sense why
Right.
it sounds like that.
Yeah.
Right. 100%. And so maybe we just give credit to Travis. But Chris, you said that one of your go-tos these days is pop punk. What are you listening to today?
I mean, my go-to always is the story so far. I've had a hard time my entire life ever singling out a favorite band, but I think especially these days it's an easy story so far is at the top of the list. I love that band. So whenever there's a moment where I'm like I don't know what to listen to, it's story so far gets put on every single time.
Do
You
you like
catch the latest single?
I honestly don't know if I have. I usually default to their first three albums. So
Mhm.
What You Don't See, Under Soil and Dirt, and the self-titled album.
Self-titled is really good.
Yeah.
See, and you guys have said that. I don't care for the self-titled. It got too different for me because Under Soil and Dirt and What You Don't See are very pop punk.
Hmm.
The story so far, self-titled, they started to pull a title fight, changing their sound a little bit. And it wasn't as poppy, I guess, is probably the way to say it.
Yeah. I could see that.
Yeah, I think the story so far that kind of started following the trend of being a little more indie pop
Yeah.
instead of pop.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly. Now that being said, Big Blind, their single that just came out, it's like one of my favorite songs they've put out. I love that song. And I went back and listened to Proper Dose, and I actually really like Proper Dose now after listening to Big Blind. I didn't really give Proper Dose a listen in 2018 when it dropped. Have you listened to that one much, Chris?
No.
Because you're stuck in.
I'm stuck in the past.
have you listened to the singer's new project? I think that's why the story so far is not doing anything really anymore.
No, I actually didn't know he was doing something.
What? Remember that band name? I can't
No
remember.
pressure.
No Pressure.
Yeah.
So if you like the story so far, No Pressure is like more of like the punk version of where the story so far was going. So it's almost like the opposite direction where they were starting to go towards the end.
Oh, nice.
But
Yeah.
they did a tour with Koyo. Are you into that band at all?
No, I haven't even heard of him.
I think if you like story so far, like I think Koyo is a band you would really enjoy. They're from Long Island, New York, and it's actually funny. They did a backyard show a while ago, and it looks like it's the same backyard that Taking Back Sunday just shot their music video in. But
Yeah.
you can see the guys from the band Koyo like in there. It was like a full on like old school like I don't know hardcore show like stage dives and stuff. The singer's like upside down.
That's cool.
So it looks like they're kind of come from that type of scene. They've got a good backing between hardcore and like I don't know pop punk stuff like that.
For sure. Did you listen to the new Taking Back Sunday song then, Josh?
I did. Surprisingly, I was pretty skeptical because I was like, I'm not into anything new they've released. I didn't mind these two, even though
Yeah.
they're vastly different from when they first started, but I didn't mind these two.
I was the same way. I was actually very pleasantly surprised because I did not like. So they had that album that had kind of the abstract art of like the girl and stuff on it. Anything after that, I have not been a fan of so far with Taking Back Sunday. But this song I was actually very happy with, called
Yeah.
like So Old or something, like S''OLD.
Mhm.
Sold.
Yeah, I really liked the first record, and I liked Tell Your Friends, and I liked Where You Want to Be, and then when they lost that guitarist, I'm gonna just assume that most of Where You Want to Be was already written by the first guitarist. Because as soon as they did Louder Now, I just I was like, it's okay, but like not really into it. And then when they lost that guitarist and picked up the old one, they kind of started to go back that direction. But
I like Louder Now. Chris, I mean, we used to listen to these guys all the time. What are your thoughts on Take It Back Sunday?
Louder Now is when I started to lose interest. There was some decent songs on there, but Tell All Your Friends Where You Want to Be or top 10 albums for sure. I love old school Taking Back Sunday. I remember back in the day, it was like Taking Back Sunday and Under Oath were like the two bands that we loved, and they were like complete opposite type of music.
Mm-hmm.
And then they announced the show that they were playing together, and it was like a dream come true that both Taking Back Sunday and Under Oath were going to be at the same show at the same time. Like that was so cool.
Did Thursday play that show as well?
Ooh,
I remember it being.
Don't remember.
It was a crazy lineup.
I remember it being at the Saltaire. I
Yeah,
think in like November of it would have been November of 2009 because you guys graduated 09, so it would have been 09. Or
Taking Back Sunday, Under Oath, Armor for Sleep.
That's right.
Is that
Ooh,
is
I
that
don't
what
remember
it was?
That was
So was it Billy Talent or Thursday, or is
Let's
that
see
another?
here. See if I can collect everyone. I just have those three currently listed on it, but there was one more. I remember there being one other, and I can't remember who it was either.
I don't think it was Billy Talent because I think the only time I've seen them was at Warped Tour.
That was 2006 then, right?
It was summer after ninth grade. It was right
Okay.
before high school.
Yeah, so I freaking loved Armor for Sleep. They're coming for a 20-year anniversary of their first album.
Mm-hmm.
But Car Underwater, that album is definitely a top album for me.
Yeah, they're coming with the early November, which is another band.
Right.
That was really good back in said day.
Right.
Do you guys remember a band called Emmanuel?
Yeah.
Yes. You cannot rape the willing.
So I had the same kind of deal that you had. I had a song stuck in my head and I couldn't remember who it was, but I remember like the chorus said something like "Sway, oh sway" or something like that. But the song's called "Make Tonight," and I was like, "Oh, Emmanuel." So I started listening to that record. That record's pretty southerny. They only released 2 records, like a year back to back, and then just nothing, just done. But I remember seeing Emmanuel once, and I don't remember who they came with.
Yeah.
I know they were at Warped Tour at least once or twice. That's where I remember seeing them.
I remember not loving Emmanuel, and I think a lot of it was because of that song you just mentioned, Chris.
I'm pretty sure we were watching Emmanuel at Warped Tour on their stage, and as soon as they ended, we immediately jumped to the next stage, which was Katy Perry.
Okay, so that would have been 2007. That's awesome. That's a good switch. So we're going to run through just a couple of the bands that we've done so far on the podcast and tell me what you remember about them just really quick. Scary Kids.
Oh, Scary Kids is probably the band I have seen the most live. There was a couple of years there that I swear 2 or 3 times a year they were coming for concert, but they were part of my favorite concert lineup ever, which was at Lo-Fi, and it was A Static Lullaby, Haste the Day, Scary Kids, and Bedlight for Blue Eyes, I think were the 4 bands.
Oh, so sick.
But it was one of the best shows I've ever seen. And I don't know if you guys remember Lo-Fi, but that atmosphere, I loved that venue so much.
Lo-Fi was interesting. It was like, wasn't it in like the bottom of like one of the taller buildings or something like that?
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, and it was small, it was intimate. It was kind of tiered. It was like almost like 3 tiers that you could step down up to the stage. I love that venue.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. Set Your Goals.
Set Your Goals is the first band I saw that I was part of a fight. That was fun.
Okay.
That was at Warped Tour. Had no idea who they were at the time. Me and Kyle went over to listen to them and had no idea who was playing. And freaking these guys were going at it, and they came straight for us. I remember I got knocked into a trash can and fell over. And we were like, what the frick is going on, man? Who are these guys?
What year would you say that was?
That would have been 6.
Are you saying you were one of those people?
I need to confirm a year.
6 or 7 would be my guess.
Who played before Set Your Goals? Do you remember?
No, because I don't think we were at that stage. We were kind of just walking around and we were like, oh, these guys are pretty sick. And we like stopped to listen. They didn't have a big crowd at the time. Like they were not who they became.
It would have been 2006 because 2007, they were the first band and we ran to be part of that one.
Okay.
So that's the thing. So that's where I get lost. So because in 2007, I did not get to Warped Tour until about noon because I was at a scout camp 2007. Now in 2008, I remember they played first because it went Set Your Goals, A Day to Remember, Maylene and the Sons of Disaster, and they were back to back stages next to each other. And then As They Lay Dying was across the way. That's where I get confused. Unless they played like beginning of 2007 as well.
Yeah. I mean, 2007.
That was the year.
I clearly remember.
That was the year Parkway Drive got put on. Haste the Day played, and Throwdown played. I remember that.
I'm pretty sure I remember me and Kyle talking to you, Josh, about it afterwards, and you told us that they were part of the straight edge scene, and so that's where their crowd came from, and we were like, oh, that makes a little more sense. Why they're a little more rowdy fans.
But were you there in 2006 then, Josh?
No, in 2006, if they played early, I remember 2006. I saw Armor for Sleep, Day 2. I remember seeing Thursday, and they did like the garbage rainbow where they threw garbage.
Yeah.
Over. Under Oath. No, I would not have been into Set Your Goals at that point. Yeah, 2006. Okay. I was more, like I say, along the lines of like Thrice, Under Oath, Used, whatever.
I feel like all of these kind of bleed a little bit. Okay. Dead and Divine.
Honestly, don't know if I even know them.
Oh, yeah? You don't remember Dead and Divine?
Dead and Divine. It doesn't sound familiar.
They had that song San Dimas, where it's like him yelling at the beginning, "My name's in lights," and then it goes into that southern riff.
I'll have to look them up after.
You'll have to look them up. We saw Dead and Divine with Emarosa and Gwen Stacy at the Avalon. And there was that was another one where there was just like 15 of us until a little bit later when Emarosa played.
Did Secret and Whisper play that show?
Probably. They usually came with like 5 bands, and I usually remember like 3 of them. And I went specifically because I loved Dead and Divine, and then I loved Gwen Stacy. And at the time, I thought Johnny Craig was cool. He could sing really good, but turns out he's kind of a D-bag.
He may be a D-bag, but he's one of the best singers out there, that's for sure.
You can't say otherwise, for sure. He has an incredible voice. Old band here, Boy Sets Fire. Do you remember listening to them much?
A little bit, yeah. I don't know if I really have any memories of them, though.
Okay. My memory was in Kyle's basement. He was often playing Boy Sets Fire because of like Brady and stuff like that. And then last one here, well, we actually talked about him already, but From First to Last. You mentioned that you were a big fan of Dear Diary, but did you ever see From First to Last?
I'm almost positive I did once, and I'm almost wondering if it was the same show as what I just mentioned was my all-time favorite show, because I feel like there was a 5th band there, and I feel like it may have been From First to Last. But I would have to look that up to verify.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I remember the tour that I looked up, the one with the Human Abstract, showed that From First to Last played, but like now that I'm kind of like trying to bring my memory together, I think From First to Last dropped the tour. And so it was just The Bled, August Burns Red, and the Human Abstract. The one time I got to see From First to Last was with actually Story of the Year and He Is Legend at Club Ice in 2006.
Cool. Okay, well, Chrissy, Frid Nips, Nips. all your mini nicknames. We appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you reminiscing with us and talking for a bit. If anyone remembers any of these bands or any of these tours, please hit us up on the socials. But next week, we'll get back to doing a band review kind of thing. And I'm thinking it's going to be a day to remember. Chris, you have any thoughts on a day to remember before I let you go?
They were one of the best bands ever in high school, but they fell off. At least from my point of view. I haven't listened to them in a long time, but I do remember some of their early albums being some of the best out there.
They had terrible cartoon merch.
They had some of the best cartoon merch. Freaking Pac-Man with the ghosts that every kid had.
I do feel like it was one of the bands that went mainstream, like one of the earlier bands that went mainstream that I can remember. Like they got huge, and a ton of people that weren't normally listening to that type of music, I feel like became huge fans of them.
These were often shows that I remembered, and we'll get into this, but oftentimes it was the mixed crowd that usually did not end well. We'll kind of leave it at that. But no, man, we really appreciate you jumping on. Hopefully we can bring you back on again. But in the meantime, catch y'all later.
Laters.
Thanks, guys.